welcome to Tennessee's at-home learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all you 6th graders out there, although anyone is welcome to tune in. This lesson is the 4th in its series. My name is Megan Gilly and I'm a 6th grade teacher in Tennessee schools. I'm super excited to be your teacher for today's lesson. Welcome to my virtual classroom. If you didn't see our previous lessons or you would like to visit this lesson, you may go to the Tennessee Department of Education's website at www.tn.gov/education. Of course, you can tune into today's lesson, but it might be more fun if you go back and watch our other lessons, since today we will talk about things that we have previously learned. Today we are going to be learning how sticky rice is grown in Laos. Before we get started, to participate fully in our lesson, you will need the following materials: paper, pen or pencil, and a surface to write on, of course. And then the student packet for ELA, grade 6, lesson 19, which can also be found at the Tennessee Department of Education's website. In addition to your student response from lesson 18, if you have it. So I'll hang on just a moment for you to collect your supplies before we begin. And let's go ahead and start. In our last lesson, we did a close reading of the article, A Taste of Sticky Rice, Laos's National Dish, and looked for how the author conveyed the idea that eating sticky rice is a joyful experience for people in Laos. We found that the author used different information to help convey that, whether it was from facts or descriptive words, or the fact that it's just part of the Laotian national identity. In your independent practice from last session, you wrote a narrative description of a food that gives you joy when you eat it. Your goal was to use some of the same techniques to convey that the food you chose brings you joy. I'd like to read a student's response to you. Listen for the techniques that the student used to convey her ideas. I can still remember the first time I smelled the sweet, smoky flavor of hickory wood when we walked into the restaurant. It was my first time ever to try traditional barbecue, but I immediately knew it would not be my last. As the waitress brought the plate of pulled pork, I knew immediately this would be the first time in a while I did not need to ask for ketchup for a meal. As I ate each smoky bite, the barbecue continued to melt in my mouth. We've made several trips back to my favorite restaurant. I still eat the pulled pork sometimes, but the happiness that I feel when I try more and more off the menu lets me know that the sweet, smoky flavor of any barbecue brings a smile to my face and stomach. Okay, readers, what types of descriptive language did this writer use? Yeah, I heard phrases too. They had phrases such as smelled the sweet, smoky flavor, melts in my mouth, brings a smile to my face and stomach. I want you to take a moment to highlight some of the descriptive phrases that you used to describe the food that gives you a joyful experience. So take a moment to do that. And I'm sitting here thinking of all the foods that give me a joyful experience as you are doing that. Okay, readers, then let's go ahead and start with today's task. Our goal is to finish reading the informational text, A Taste of Sticky Rice, Laos's National Dish, and we'll focus on how the author shows that eating sticky rice is essential for the people of Laos. Then we will determine how the author conveys the idea that eating sticky rice is essential for survival. So we're going to make a web today to organize our notes. So take a moment to set up your web. It will look really similar to what we did in the previous lesson. So go ahead and draw a circle, and in the center, I want you to write survival. And that's where we will collect evidence from the text, and we'll just jot arrows as we go through. So we're going to reread, again, A Taste of Sticky Rice, Laos's national dish, starting at paragraph 13. We left off at paragraph 12 in the previous lesson. So set your notes aside, and here we begin. But sticky rice isn't merely spiritual fuel. Because it takes longer to digest than white rice does, it sates hunger for longer periods. That's good for Laotian monks who generally don't eat after midday. People give us only sticky rice, which is awesome, said Sari Fonase, a 19-year-old monk with brown eyes and a gentle smile. He was standing in the sun-dappled courtyard of a Buddhist temple in Luang Prabang, where tourists line up each morning like band groupies outside of a stadium box office to place steaming clumps of cow now into the monks' collection pots. When I asked why he prefers sticky rice to white rice, the monk said, "If I eat sticky rice, I'll be full longer." Laotian farmers I asked repeated variations of Sari's explanation. Agriculture, mainly subsistence, rice farming employs 3 out of 4 Laotians. Sticky rice packs well in banana leaves and is a common field snack. So we start today's reading with a great paragraph that gives us a lot of information about the impact of sticky rice in Laos. And there's a lot of information for us to analyze. So I'm going to ask you some guiding questions, and I want you to see if you could come up with some really good answers. You can jot your thoughts in the back of your word web, and then we'll add some together to our web. So I want you to think about, what does it mean when it says, but sticky rice isn't merely spiritual fuel? Think about that. It's not just spiritual fuel. You're right. It is physical fuel. The text says that it sates hunger for longer periods, and I don't generally eat it after midday. I would be fuller longer if I just eat the sticky rice. So we know that they need it to be able to stay full throughout the day. At the end of the paragraph, we go from talking about Laotian monks to talking about Laotian farmers. What information does this paragraph give us about the impact of sticky rice in farmers' lives? Again, be thinking about the details that we have. We know that it keeps you fuller longer. Farmers grow sticky rice to support their families, because it says rice farming employs 3 out of 4 Laotians, and that farmers are able to carry the sticky rice as snacks when they go to work. So when it comes to survival and how this expresses and supports that, I want you to jot down the 3 things on your web here. 1, draw an arrow, and I want you to write down in a box, sticky rice fills you up for long periods of time. That has to deal with survival, right? We want to stay full for a while. It also says that both monks and farmers eat sticky rice for survival. It comes out to say that. And then we also know that farmers grow sticky rice to subsist on, meaning to stay full for a while. So add those details to your web. Subsistence farming, again, that it's referring to when it says farmers grow sticky rice to subsist on. Again, it's when it's a main source of food. Subsistence farming. I think I said it wrong the first time, sorry. And let's continue on. Sticky rice grows in Laotian lowlands and uplands. Lowland farmers plant it in flooded paddies. Upland farmers intercrop it on hillsides with companion crops like taro, cassava, and chili peppers. Because hillsides generally receive less predictable supplies of water than paddies do, hillside rice fields tend to be more susceptible to drought. So this paragraph is describing different regions where sticky rice is grown. Lowlands are flat and the uplands are hilly. We also have here the word paddies. It might be strange, but I know that rice grows in rice paddies, which are areas where allow water to pool. So rice grows better when it's in a wet environment. Here are a couple of pictures of rice paddies, just so we can put a visual to what it is that we're reading about. You can see in both those photos there are there's plenty of water that is surrounding that area, so the rice can grow well in that particular environment. So when we think about, well, which is better to grow rice in, is it the lowlands or the uplands? That's right, it's the lowlands. Again, the hillsides receive less predictable supplies of water and are more susceptible to drought, so the lowlands are better. So let's continue to read on. Curious about hillside sticky rice, my friends and I rode an overnight bus from Luang Prabang to Luana Natma, a one-lane town near the Laos-China border. At Luang Natma Eco Outfitter, we asked a friendly guide to take us into the town on rented motorbikes. The passing landscape alternated between forest, rubber plantations, thatch roof houses, and clear hillsides whose golden color reminded me of California's Santa Ynez Valley. So I want us to think about, what style did this author write this paragraph in? Think about it. We've talked about travel narrative and informational text. So if we had to think about one of those two, you would be right if you said travel narrative. During the last two lessons, we learned about a travel narrative and its characteristics. So now after all the informational paragraphs, we kind of get back to this story about traveling through Laos. And as we continue reading this travel narrative, I want you to try to visualize what the author is describing. Again, keeping in mind that we want to add to our web how the text details support that sticky rice helps with survival. Soon we were hiking near a sleepy village whose sign read Kuwasong. Farmers from Kamu ethnic group were harvesting sticky rice on a distant hillside. As we approached russet-colored rice stalks, Luck praised the view. He had sketched similarly pastoral scenes in primary school, he recalled, but always from his imagination. We're not in the lowlands anymore, said Luck, whose white headphones were playing Laotian pop music from a pocket MP3 player. Those people have to stand up all day, and they don't have any technology to help. As I read this paragraph, I was imagining his friend traveling into more remote and rural parts of Laos. And the word pastoral actually refers to pasture or farmland. So I imagine that they're seeing all this land that is used for agriculture. The lines on a distant hillside and we're not in the lowlands anymore show me that they have traveled into the uplands of Laos. And when Luck says those people have to stand up all day and they don't have any technology to help, I imagine that he's saying this to describe that the farmers farm by hand rather than using equipment and tractors to help farm. So I want us to put that detail on our web about survival, that farmers do not have any technology to help them when it comes to farming of sticky rice. And I like that paragraph because it gives us a lot of descriptions of the landscape. All right, readers, let's continue on. Indeed, most Khmu people are upland subsistence farmers, and they use decidedly low-tech production techniques. Men and women stripped sticky rice grains by hand from mature stalks, then dropped the grains into woven baskets attached to their hips. After dumping the rice into white sacks, they carried these sacks down the hill. So this paragraph goes on to emphasize the hardships that the Khmu people face. It reiterates that these people are subsistence farmers, meaning that farming is their main source of food and money, and also that farmers use low-tech production technique. Again, just like we wrote on our web, the farmers didn't have the technology and the tractors to be able to help them farm. They are doing this all by hand. Since we've already noted that fact in our notes, we won't rewrite them, but we'll continue reading. Rural development experts told me that many Laotian farmers wage a constant battle against food insecurity. The farmers of Khao Song were no exception. Because of drought and rodent infestations, they said 16 of their village's 57 families wouldn't harvest enough sticky rice this year to meet their own needs. In the cities, they eat sticky rice for taste, said Zhuolang, a quiet farmer who was drinking water from a plastic motor oil can. Here, we eat it for survival. So I can tell that the author switches back to a more informational style here as he writes. What do you think the most important piece of information is here? Yeah, I think the same thing. It says that they eat for survival. In addition, if you said the drought and rodent infestations, you're spot on. I think there's some interesting vocabulary that explains this, and we have the author using the phrase food insecurity. He's trying to explain that many farmers might not be able to provide enough food for their families due to the challenges of rice farming. So let's write some of this on our web. The text states that there's food insecurity. We have that 16 out of 57 families will not harvest enough food. And here they eat sticky rice for survival. So jot those to your notes. Again, in lesson 18, we talked about how on our web, eating sticky rice is a joyful experience, but the second half seems to convey this idea that sticky rice is a means of survival. So it's interesting how the author takes this joyful tone and now puts it into a more focused tone as the writer continues the article. Let's continue on. Over an evening bonfire in Khao Song, a roadside cluster of wooden stilt houses, farmers discussed survival strategies. Some were selling rubber, sap, and wild cardamom to Chinese traders. Others were selling rice harvesting baskets to tourists. If all else failed, said 41-year-old farmer Han Tam Ko, needy farmers would borrow sticky rice from their neighbors. So in this paragraph, the author talks about how farmers might adapt if their rice crops got destroyed. What are some ways they might try to make some money, though? That's right. They might try to sell rubber sap or wild cardamom, which is a spice to Chinese traders. They might also try to sell rice harvesting baskets to tourists. But what do you think happens if they can't make the money to buy the food that they need? Yeah, it says that they would borrow the sticky rice from their neighbors. So I want us to go ahead and draw on our web that needy farmers would borrow sticky rice from their neighbors, which demonstrates the means of how sticky rice is needed for survival. In our last paragraph, follow along with me. The threat of hunger didn't diminish their hospitality. As stars replaced the sun in a cloudless sky, the farmers invited us into a stilt house and served us spicy jiao, pickled bamboo shoots, fresh chicken soup, and steaming hunks of cow now. I handled my sticky rice carefully, conscious of how much elbow grease had gone into each grain. We ate and chatted, ate some more until about 8 p.m. Afterward, we were so full that we went directly to bed. Lying under a mosquito net in the head villager's drafty stilt house, I listened for sounds of evening activity. Silence. The farmers were sleeping, and for good reason. There was more sticky rice to harvest, starting at daybreak. Well, I love this paragraph. So we're back to the author's travel narrative as far as style that they write in. And the first line of this paragraph really says a lot about the Laotian people that he is visiting. The threat of hunger didn't diminish their hospitality. What do you think that means here? Because diminish means to decrease, and hospitality is friendliness. So the fact that the farmers had very little and they were still willing to give it to their guests. They happily welcomed the author and his friends. And I think that the first line is a really good detail for us to include in our notes. So go ahead and draw an arrow, the last one there at the very top, that the threat of hunger didn't diminish their hospitality. It's a pretty powerful line. So I want you to think about then, what did the author, you think, learn from this trip? I think that in the end, one, he learns a lot about sticky rice, but two, I think that he sees the effects it has on the South Asian country, as well as how it brings this sense of togetherness. Food can do that a lot of times. Think about some of your families and what food helps bring you all together. So it acknowledges the fact that people depend on food as well as for survival. So I think the author did a really great job of blending this travel narrative and informational text to explain the importance of sticky rice in the country of Laos. So today you have read and collected evidence that will help you answer the question, how does the author convey that idea that eating sticky rice is essential for survival? So to answer this question, you will write a paragraph that explains how the author uses various details in the text, which you have right here, to support this idea. Fortunately, you already have lots of them. So before you answer this question in your independent practice, I want to show you how to do this by answering a different question. In Lesson 18, you took notes that helped you answer, how does the author convey the idea that eating sticky rice is a joyful experience? And that was the web that we had created. I'm going to show you an example response, and we'll look closely at why the example response is a good answer. And as I read the example response, I want you to think about the information the person included and how they organize their sentences. So here is the example response. The author uses many different details to convey the idea that eating sticky rice is a joyful experience. First, the story of Luck trying to find sticky rice on the bus shows how badly in Laos people want sticky rice. Also, the author presents several details to show that sticky rice is identified with Laos, like baguettes in France and sushi in Japan. They eat a lot of it, about 345 pounds per person, according to the article. Sticky rice has been grown in Southeast Asia for over 4,000 years. Finally, sticky rice is used in both everyday dishes and religious ceremonies. Monks use it for food because it helps them stay full for longer. A monk said, "People give us only sticky rice, which is awesome." Since so much sticky rice has been eaten by so many people for so many years, these details show the joy of eating sticky rice. So what can we learn from this student's response? The one thing that I really noticed is about how this first sentence conveys the focus of the question. The author uses many different details to convey the idea that eating sticky rice is a joyful experience. In addition, I also noticed how the author used many different details to express the idea that sticky rice is an enjoyable meal in Laos. They gave very specific details from the text. And then I also noticed that they used quotes as well as paraphrased information, meaning they put some of the details in their own words. So you will want to do the same for your independent practice. Make sure that your evidence supports the idea that sticky rice is eaten as a means of survival. So to help you get started, I'm going to give you an introductory sentence similar to the one that you see highlighted on your screen, but for the question that you're going to answer. So on your piece of paper, I want you, on the back side or a news sheet is fine, write Independent Practice Lesson 19, and I want you to start with this sentence. In the article, A Taste of Sticky Rice, Laos's national dish, the author included several details to support the idea that sticky rice is necessary for survival in Laos. So as you're writing that sentence down, I want to communicate what your task is. You will write a paragraph response that answers the question, how does the author convey the idea that eating sticky rice is necessary for survival? You are encouraged to use your notes from today's lesson. Try to use quotations and paraphrase details to support your response. Remember the introductory sentence that starts with, in the article, A Taste of Sticky Rice, Laos's national dish, the author included several details to support the idea that sticky rice is necessary for survival in Laos, and use that to guide your thinking. I enjoyed reading the article with you today, and thank you so much for inviting me into your home. I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson in Tennessee's At Home Learning series for literacy. Bye.